VTuber lore is, let's be honest, it's mostly a joke. People constantly make fun of the fact that these VTubers will have super badass backstories and then be themselves playing a horror game or melt their brain trying to figure out a basic puzzle. But that lore is still a good part of the appeal. Not only does it provide an excuse for a sick design, it also adds just enough of a wall for the viewer to disassociate the anime figure with the person who's actually behind it. That separation has clearly been a massive appeal for millions of people around the world, and for those who are too shy or nervous to show their face online, to still provide entertainment for the masses. My water's been in the shot the whole time. Oops. However, what I find fun about the lore is when there's a large group that all canonically share a world and then trying to reconcile all those stories together. For example, did you know that Nijisanji's original lore was that it all takes place in a high school? I don't know how we got from that to vampires, deranged cat girls, bara elf maids, and whatever the hell Demeter is, but I'm not gonna complain about it. Now, I don't have the time, energy, or Japanese proficiency to go through all of Nijisanji JP's intros and try and figure out how the hell that happened, but I can do it for Nijisanji EN. With only 14 VTubers and a vague fantasy theme, you think this would be pretty easy. I implore you to look at the length of this video. I've lost my mind trying to figure this out. There is nothing that I can say to prepare you for what you're about to hear. Anyways, here is your guide to the canonical world of Nijisanji EN. And just to clarify, this is pretty much exclusively taken from the debut streams, as I believe that is the most canon and official lore that we can actually rely on. Obviously, we'll be starting with Lazulite, and what better way to start than with Big PP herself, Pomu. Her story starts us off simply enough, simple being a generous descriptor. Pomu is a fairy living in virtual Neverland, which is apparently a single island on a planet that is otherwise just ocean and also exists in a computer. But she's also somehow real, and since people have stopped believing in fairies, she's been losing her magical powers and had to take up a job as an office lady to compensate. This office lady position actually comes up again, but we'll get there. So to get more people to believe in fairies, Pomu spent way too much time on the internet and discovered that there's even a fetish for She also became a weeb, found out VTubers were getting successful, and decided to become one so she could plot a course towards world domination. Okay, that last bit was quite a bit of a jump, but okay. But she also does a Donald Duck impression.
Please hold your applause.
Next comes Alira, a solar sky dragon and a dragon tamer who is so old that she's met God. So we can go ahead and just add God to the list of things that are canon to the Nijisanji EN world. And you may be wondering why a dragon is taming other dragons. It kind of feels like that Pluto and Goofy vibe. Well, as Alira points out, some weirdos put their kids on a leash, so touché. And that's pretty much it. Alira doesn't really have a lot in her debut, but we'll get some more later on thanks to her little sister. In the meantime, we have one last member of Lazulite to get through, and of course it is none other than Miss Egg herself, Finana. A tropical mermaid the age of Fruit Loop, she's a royal descendant of the dragon sea god Yugu. Originally tasked with preserving the coral reef, she was one day told of our human civilization by her fish friends. Eventually, she said goodbye to her finned friends and made her way onto land in order to study us humans. And again, that's it. As you can tell, Lazulite didn't really go too hard on their lore. In fact, we can't even be sure if Pomu's home of Virtual Neverland is the same world as Alira and Finana, or if she exists in the computers in their world. Now, there is something to be said that the first 3 Niji EN songs all allude to these characters existing in a virtual world, but is it a mirror world to ours? Did somebody from our world create it? If that's true, who is the god that Alira met? I doubt we're going to get any answers to this, but let's move on to Obsidia and see if that helps. Finally, more full-on lore. Thanks to Selene, we're gonna learn a fair bit about this world. First off, Selene is canonically a little shit. She enjoys picking on her older sister and wreaking havoc on the humans. Unlike her sister, Selene is a lunar sky dragon and also confirms that, if they want to, both Selene and Alira can switch between human and dragon forms at will. Selene is also a dragon tamer and has quite a lot of dragons at her command that she uses to help her wreak the aforementioned havoc. She also is a dragon racer and must be pretty damn good at it considering she throws away all her trophies. For some reason, this also confirms that Petra and Rosemi are both dragon racers too. Selene also fully confirms that their world is not ours, saying that,
I come from a place very similar to your world, but instead of rabbits on the moon, we have dragons.
And considering the fact that we finally see Pomu alongside all the others, we can assume that they all exist in the world of Virtual Neverland. Or Pomu can hop dimensions, which has much scarier implications. Though somehow this isn't unheard of in the world of Virtual Neverland. Selene actually reveals that she's only half dragon, and that her dad was isekai'd from our universe into theirs and met her mom. And while this doesn't mean too much right now, it does have some interesting implications for later on. Man, there's a lot to unpack here. So to recap, we now know that everyone exists together in what we'll now just refer to as Virtual Neverland. This world mirrors ours to a certain degree, given that they have the same games and shows as us, and either exists in or shares our internet structure, which is how they're able to stream to us. Also, Selene casually mentioning she ate her twin.
Which was the day I ate my twin. Anyway.
Wait, but she was hatched from an egg. So does that... Oh. Okay. That was a lot. Hopefully Rosemi's won't be as nuts. Rosemi was a lonely rose maiden who wished for more of a human touch due to how many people liked to appreciate her looks but were too scared to ever come close. She often saw Pomu flying around and tending to the other flowers. One New Yorker bee later,
Buzz off, I'm flying over here.
Rosemi met up with Pomu and became a VTuber. Sorry, VTuber. And now acts as Pomu's intern in whatever office the two work in. Though I like to believe that it's in the stocks and contracts auction market. And thankfully, that's it. Now here's where we would go to the last member of Obsidia, but we're gonna have to hold off on that cute penguin for a bit, and you'll see why later. But that brings us to our next group, Etheria. Starting off with everyone's favorite fox mommy, Nina, we learn that she took this job thinking she didn't actually have to do anything. And honestly, yeah, fair enough. Though she eventually informs us that she used to be the keeper of luck for heaven, which is apparently a place that you can work, and is a bureaucratic nightmare. And my worst nightmare, you can't drink there? She also says that God, yes, this is the second confirmation of God's existence, will sue her for slander if she's not careful with what she says about heaven. Nina also reveals that, at least for spirits/celestial beings whose splendor is too great for human eyes, they require someone to give them form, a drawing in this case, and will come in dreams or visions to inspire people to make said forms. Finally, she claims that the god who saved her life was Japanese, though she doesn't clarify if that's from being a fox to becoming a kitsune, kitsune to keeper of luck, or ex-keeper of luck to VTuber, but now we know that there might be multiple gods of Virtual Neverland, or that God is Japanese, and I don't know what to do with that information. Overall, Nina doesn't say too much, but does imply a lot about what's happening around Virtual Neverland. Also, she says honey a lot, and it gets me every time, so let's quickly move on to Millie.
In this vivid city of dreams, the endless pain is all I feel. No friends and I'm super empty. Someone help me.
I immediately regret this decision. Joking aside, Millie's lore starts with an original song that made me dredge up my Japanese knowledge to understand part of. I'm sure someone in the comments had translated it, but that's cheating. I'd like to tell you a story that many people have forgotten. A girl who can only remember her name. And then shit gets sad. Millie Song is the tale of her happy childhood learning magic from her kind grandmother until one day, a group of villagers decide to attack and burn down their home, killing her grandmother. The villagers then took the young Millie and were about to burn her at the stake. Again, shit gets dark, before a mysterious black cat saves her from the flames with a devilish grin. The cat asks Millie to perform a pact with him, saving her life and giving her great powers, but dooming her to the underworld. Then we cut to this.
Nijisanji!
Which is probably the biggest fucking tonal shift we could have gotten. And it only gets weirder. Millie was wandering around the underworld when she saw Enna, spoilers, eating, and I shit you not, edibles. After trying Enna's Homu leaf parfait, she loves it so much that she magics herself out of hell and up to Earth, only to discover that her magic doesn't work there and now she's stuck in our world. Then, holy shit, another song. Millie, my god, so much effort put into this. I am honestly very, very impressed. This anime OP then informs us that, post getting stuck on Earth, Millie has been trying to find work, but despite everything, has found herself helpless, homeless, and alone. Honestly, I don't know how much of this song is lore, and how much of it is just a painful reflection of being in your 20s and current year, even down to becoming a content creator. This one hurt. But hey, I definitely watch. I've burned to death and formed a pact with a demon, but I got hooked on human food and now I'm stuck on Earth doing jobs I don't like, so I became a VTuber. Seems like a fun show. And now here's where things are gonna get interesting. And by interesting, I mean unhinged. It's stated several times that Millie came to Earth, like our Earth, one that seemingly has no magic. Well, we know that Virtual Neverland must have magic with all the fairies, dragons, and so on. And we know that people can travel between Virtual Neverland and our world thanks to Celeste's dad, so it's not unreasonable to think that she may have magicked her way into our universe. But then she says this.
That's why I decided to crash on Elira's place.
Now what the fuck does that mean for us? Well, we could guess that maybe like how Nina lost most of her powers coming from heaven, Millie's magic came from being in the underworld and coming back to Earth took it away. If that's the case, then we could possibly assume that Virtual Neverland is just the name of the whole universe and that their mirror world is still called Earth. Now, as the name Virtual implies, the secret could be that they're actually in our computers. This may have been obvious, but aside from the song's reference to it, we only really had one other reference to them being virtual. Homu initially calling it Virtual Neverland and showing herself in a monitor. It wasn't until Millie that we actually had another reference to this concept when she asks the world system to fix the bug of her intelligence score refusing to go up past a -3.
I also try increasing my intelligence, but for some reason it won't budge. Hello? World system? Can you please fix this bug? Thank you.
And now that we finally have two instances of this rhetoric, lots of things start to make a bit more sense. God is probably whoever programmed Virtual Neverland. He's likely Japanese. The heaven that Nina came from was likely our world, and the form that she needed to have made was a virtual avatar. Millie's underworld could have been the scrapped concept / trash can, and everyone that we've met, barring Nina and Celeste's dad, is a program in the world. This also makes sense as to why Celeste's dad would have access to all those games after being isekai'd. He just added them to the program. They share our internet because they exist inside of it. Again, most of this probably could have been said a lot sooner, but I wanted a little bit more evidence than just Homu on a screen. And then Enna muddies up that whole concept, so awesome. Long story short, Enna was a human on Earth, but was such a bitter asshole that after she dies in a way she can't remember, the divine beings send her to the underworld. While there, she becomes more of a shitter. So as a newer punishment, the divine beings bring her up to heaven and make her a bird to sing for everyone. Now she's trying to atone for her past and make the world a better place. If we're still operating under the same assumptions as before, we can actually assume that Enna's time as a human was actually her life as one in Virtual Neverland. The reason she can't remember her death was because she was actually removed from the main world and dropped into the trash can with Millie. After all the garbage code in the underworld started to corrupt her, the programmers, aka the divine beings, pulled her out to reprogram and remodel her into a virtual singer, kind of like a really high-end AI Vocaloid. The question here becomes, if people from our world can enter the world of Virtual Neverland, can the programs from Virtual Neverland enter ours? If we're assuming that heaven is our world and they brought Enna into heaven, does that mean that they brought her to life? Or is this just her interpretation of her becoming more public-facing and reacting with the real world more? I'm going to guess that it's her being made aware of our world and being under stricter control of the programmers as she becomes an outward-facing product. Like in the lore, you could see Enna merch around in our world and you could purchase her in some way, while the others just exist in Virtual Neverland and interact with us via the internet. Meanwhile, Reimu is dead, and she's known as the Ghost of Darkness for some reason that she can't remember. Wait, that's it? Oh, thank God. And thank you, Reimu. I was getting very tired. Huh? What do you mean there's another wave? Yes, the boys are back in town. And not only is this our biggest group yet, they all also come with their own lore videos. So we've got 5 new pieces of lore to help muddy up what little clarity we've been able to garner from all of this. Starting off with Luka.
Luka, who you ask? Look at these nuts.
Luka, shut up and tell the story!
We're now introduced to a core concept of the Luxium lore that I currently have no idea how I'm going to reconcile with the rest. Time travel. See, Luka was a successful mafia boss from the year 1969. One day, while trying to help a man he believed was being mugged, he was mistaken by Mista, spoilers, as a thief and fled. Once he'd found himself backed into a corner, both he and Mista were suddenly sucked up by mysterious portals and shot forwards to the future. Upon arriving, Luka sees something saying Nijisanji. This instantly reminds him that he's going to be late to start his live stream. Now, if he's from the past, how does he know what a live stream is? How does he know he's supposed to start one? Hi there, editing Steven here. This is wrong. You see, somehow while writing and recording this, I forgot that Luka's debut story started with these lines.
This is it! Today is finally the day. Oh, I'm a little nervous. How the hell did I even get here?
While most of the points in this section do still stand on their own, I repeat this one a few too many times to cut out and still allow this section to sound natural, so I have to leave them in, but I will add something on screen to remind you that this is wrong. However, there are still some aspects of his time traveling that don't make sense. For example, and how does he know Diamond City lights?
Why is he singing? What a weirdo. You'll never have to be alone. Diamond City lights illuminate. What's it? Huh?
Well, it finally hit me. After Enna being such a success on the market, and the programmers seeing how well the rest of the Virtual Neverland programs were doing online, my theory is that Luxium, or at least Luka, Mista, Ike, and Shu, are all canonically made specifically for streaming. The programmers created them and made up various backgrounds for them, left them to stew in isolated pockets of Virtual Neverland meant to act as different time periods so they could develop more rich personalities, then pulled them back out into the main world and have them all start their career. Why else would a successful crime boss, world-famous detective, successful novelist, and sorcerer turn to playing video games on the internet? All of these are conceivably careers that they could have continued even after being shot forward in time. But if we just assume that they're all scripted backstories for a new wave of AI entertainers created by Heaven, then it all makes sense. It also explains why Mista and Luka were pulled specifically from the year 1969. Cause come on, what are the odds of that? Also, Luka's the only one with an actual age listed, which is cool. And now, my favorite lore video.
Hey baby, it's me, Shu Yamino, hey baby.
Shu's masterpiece explains that one day he learned to walk. A bully tried to make him step on some poop. It didn't work, and Shu went home for dinner. Little did anyone know, that poop was magical. Then suddenly, the poop went Super Saiyan and shot off, striking Shu and knocking him into a fire. But baby Shu didn't die. Instead, he said a burn so sick that two gods agreed he was so rad that he deserved to be sent to the future. Fucking amazing. Clearly, whichever dev was put in charge of writing his backstory and leaving him in the past to develop didn't think that hard about it. And bless them for it. Meanwhile, Ike's Story is a beautiful little artsy film about how a young boy became captivated by reading stories and went on to write his own. One day while writing one of his many novels, he became exhausted and shut his eyes. When he opened them, he found himself somewhere new and terrifying. This wasn't his home, and he wasn't sure if he would ever be able to get back. But in the end, the light shone on him, and he realized that, just maybe, this new home might not be so bad. The main point of interest is that Ike is also shown starting a stream. Unlike Luka, however, he implies that he's been around for quite a while with the rest of the Luxian boys.
I had a bit of a dream about how I ended up in this place.
This just helps to show that these 5 were written by different devs, and thus their memories before debuting are all going to be different based on how much the original author wanted them to know. Luka was placed right in front of his computer, but Ike seems to have known Luka for a while. Shu went from being a baby to being an adult while transporting through time. And our final time-traveled boy, he got really drunk and a bartender just told him what VTubers are. That's all it took to convince Mista to enter the game. I wish there was more to say, but half of Mista's story is shared with Luka, and the other half is just him screaming.
Whoa. Whoa.
Oh.
When the did I get teleported? Son of a Oi! How do I become like this?
Truly, the world's greatest detective. I do love you, Mista, and I'm really sorry I couldn't talk more about you. Finally, let's discuss the only member of Luxium who didn't time travel, Vox Akuma. Considering the length of this video, Vox's backstory, and the fact that there's another really long section after this, let's try and keep this one as simple as we can. In Japan, just before the Tokugawa shogunate began, there was a small hold composed mostly of immigrants known as Akuma Castle. There were also legends around Honshu of a man whose voice could fill you with an eternal warmth and comfort. Over time, compelled by the need to follow him, the villagers around Akuma Castle created a real home for themselves and for all those who were lost. The people of the land lived in prosperity and joy, as long as they continued to follow the man who had helped build it, Vox Akuma, the voice demon. Ultimately, war came to the gates of Akuma Castle. While Vox fought valiantly and he slaughtered many of Ieyasu's men, eventually his fire was extinguished and his home destroyed. After hiding in the shadows for over 400 years, Vox has returned to reclaim his influence, just by playing video games on the internet this time. Once again, using the crafted backstory idea of Luxium's members, many of Vox's plot holes start to clear up. Vox forgetting Japanese? He was never programmed to actually know it. Vox not using his powers to rebuild somewhere in the past 400 years? He never actually lived through them. Vox being a demon, but without the corrupted code issues of Millie or Enna? He's not truly from the underworld. I know it feels like kind of a cop-out to say that the VTuber backstories are backstories for VTubers, but it's what makes the most sense given everything that we've discussed. Regardless of being in Virtual Neverland, there's no real reason for these 4 people and a 400-year-old demon to all say, I instantly know what a streamer is and want to become one after being teleported through time. There's no logical explanation for so many aspects of each story without the idea that they were intentionally manufactured for this purpose. The seeming varying lengths of time they've all spent in the modern world, the fact that they all have apartments and expensive computers, Shu's rapid aging but no one else's, why their song is the only one that doesn't mention the fact that they're computer programs, so on and so forth. Luxium is heaven trying to capitalize on the movement that the AI of Virtual Neverland have started on their own. Is what I would say if we didn't have one very important lore video that single-handedly shatters everything that we've talked about. Now, it's been a while, and I've said a lot of insane shit, so I won't fault you if you forgot that we haven't talked about Petra's backstory. And the reasoning for that is that her opening lore video goes against everything that we know about the Nijisanji EN lore. Well, it's finally time to tackle this absurd theory. All of Nijisanji EN is just Petra's imagination. I'd say hear me out on this, but if you've somehow made it this far, I highly doubt you're backing out now, so... Petra's lore video tells us the story of unidentified subject number 2434. A humanoid penguin lifeform being held in an unnamed research facility by a team of researchers monitoring special existences in the environment. This lifeform, Petra, is revealed to be the last of her species and had lived in isolation for an extended period of time before being brought to the facility. The caveat for their protection is that she will have to spend the rest of her life as if she were a human. We, as player, are brought in as a research assistant to help aid in the rehabilitation and socialization of Petra, especially thanks to our knowledge of something very important: VTubers. We discover that Petra's next step in her socialization program is to debut as a VTuber herself, and that our job is to aid her in this process. But you may have noticed something very important. That's Rosemi and Selene, not as a dragon and a rose, but as normal humans. And if Rosemi and Selene are normal humans working in a research facility, what does that mean for everyone else? Is everyone in Nijisanji EN, barring Petra, just a member of this facility's staff? We know that from Selene's debut video, they all know each other in some capacity, and Petra being present there means that one of these stories has to be fictional. You could argue that it has to be Petra's because the whole point is it's styled to be a visual novel. But she says during the proper debut that she chose her birthday based on the day that the humans found her, implying that the video is her real backstory. She even says that she attends a regular human high school and does normal human things like hanging out with her classmates. Quite a jump from racing dragons, I'd say. So how can we reconcile this with everything else that we've heard? It's simple. A VTuber-obsessed teenage girl who spent a significant portion of her life in isolation and is trying to make sense of the human world would probably have a pretty vivid imagination as she's trying to figure it all out. For example, if the research facility helps protect special existences like herself, then maybe everyone there is one too. If that's the case, then any number of things could be used as proof of this. Fanana swimming in the facility's exercise pool for her daily exercise must mean that she's a mermaid. Rosemi's pink hair and beautiful appearance but sometimes thorny attitude could mean that she's some kind of flower creature. Maybe Alira works the day shift and Selene works the night shift, but they share an office with a bearded dragon that they take care of, and boom, you've got a solar sky dragon and a lunar sky dragon who both tame dragons. Selene's flying license could just be a pilot's license. Pomu's height growing and shrinking could just be whether or not she wore shoes with bigger soles or heels that day. Mina's heaven was just the upper floors or upper management of the facility. So on and so forth. When you're a hormonal teenager experiencing human society for the first time while also binging visual novels, anime, and VTubers, your view of the world is probably going to be pretty fantastical. Hell, you can even say it explains Shu's wildly different presentation style. Shu was the only one who bothered to humor her tales and decided to tell his own backstory. But without the prior knowledge or time that Petra had in making all these stories up, he ends up improvising a fun but comparatively dumb tale. All he has to say is, and then I got hit by some magical shit. And his intentions of just meaning something magical ends up becoming literal magical shit in Petra's eyes. As Petra meets new people and has to internalize their human lives through this fantastical lens, we end up with all these seemingly disparate but vaguely connected stories for everyone important in her life. Plus, this is the only way I would believe that anyone thinks Mista was a great detective. And with all of that, we are finally finished. Please tell me what you think. What's more interesting to you, the world of Virtual Neverland or the idea that it's all in Petra's head? I'm almost scared to say this, but are there any other VTuber groups you want me to try this with? Otherwise, thank you as always for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, click the links down below. You know the YouTube things. I'm gonna go take a nap.